Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming for this amazing session today. Today, the focus of this discussion is going to be focusing on the media section of crypto, right? So, if you look at over the past few months, especially what's been happening, crypto education is an extremely important element in terms of growing the entire crypto ecosystem, right? If you look at crypto, is a lot more than just the crypto tokens and the crypto exchange which you see. Especially, I was recently a part of the India Blockchain Week last week, and we saw the amount of amazing projects which are being built over there, primarily focusing on a lot of new technologies, a lot of new use cases for the blockchain. Now it can be used to revolutionize the business, right? So, as some of the ecosystem players in the blockchain and the crypto space, I sincerely believe it becomes our responsibility to educate the masses, right? Being a part of the blockchain and crypto is not just like a quick get rich quick scheme, right? You put in $1,000, you make it $100,000 within a few months. There are a few It's an extremely volatile market too, and it's a very unpredictable market, and relying on just focusing on those kind of things will end up probably losing more money in the longer run than you might end up making, right? So just having those kind of lucky draws, relying on those kind of lucky draws to be a part of the crypto ecosystem would not probably be the best way to go. And that is why, as ecosystem players, it becomes extremely important for us to ensure that we are taking the right steps which are necessary to educate the users on what the use cases are, right? So the fundamental system of the blockchain ecosystem, how it works is, when you look at the blockchain ecosystem, the technology, when you look at the technology, right, the use cases are tremendous, especially in terms of the supply chain logistics side. Currency side, everyone already knows Bitcoin is a huge use case of currency, so that's already going to be a number one use case over there. But in addition to that, you have supply chain logistics over there. That is a big use case, which people are focusing on. There are use cases in terms of logistics, where people can use that. There are other many use cases which involve NFTs, which you may have heard of, selling for digital images and all that. But apart from that, there are lots of other use cases as well. You can have legal contracts through that. You can have other products like you can have fractional real estate through that. So that is why education of these kind of things becomes extremely important. So overall, if you look at it, the focus is going to be to kind of ensure that people are educated about this brilliant technology which is there, and most importantly, with the nature of the technology, it being completely trustless, completely transparent, it becomes extremely important and extremely valuable to understand that the data is not centered at a single platform, but is distributed across multiple places, right? So with the help of the nodes which are there, the data is transmitted across multiple areas, because of which what happens is, since the data is not stored at a centralized server, there is no one major authority who has control over the data, right? So for example, currently pretty much 60 to 70% of the internet is hosted on AWS, Amazon Web Services. So essentially, Amazon has control of that data. Now, even though it claims that it directly does not work on that, it does not interfere with the data or connect with the data, but it's still stored on Amazon servers, right? And if something happens to that servers, all that data would be lost, creating a completely blank void. And that this creates a huge dependency. Not just that it creates a huge dependency, it also becomes makes us vulnerable to the AWS service providers. That is where the blockchain ecosystem goes a really long way in terms of kind of taking it forward. Just a second. So that's why it becomes extremely important to kind of focus on the entire avenue in terms of the crypto ecosystem, and not focusing on just the small get rich quick schemes, but the overall scheme of things. So to kind of give you an example, I'm just having an issue with the guest. Let me kind of check with them. Yeah. So as I mentioned, the crypto ecosystem overall is focused on a lot of the education part of it, right? The current education system could definitely use a lot of help in terms of educating the users, but at the same time, it also becomes important that you're communicating to the right users the right way to ensure that everyone can get the best out of this opportunity. So overall, if you look at it, it is primarily the Indian users who tend to have a lot of difficulty with this, right? So I'll just add our guest over here as well to the call. Hey Sudeep, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, I understand that
So
you've been
I
really,
will
really
be
busy
in a
right
bit.
now, right? You're in the airport right now.
No, I was airport right now. I was traveling. I mean, I just came to attend Eid in Bangalore. That's where we met also. So I'm returning back to my hometown. That is Indore.
Perfect, perfect. So we just connected last week during the foundership event, right? So that is when we kind of
Yeah.
figured out that let's do something like this together. So really appreciate that you could join us, considering how busy the schedule has been.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's always a pleasure talking to people. It's always a pleasure to share your thoughts. That's what I'm always open to.
Awesome, awesome. So, just kind of, continuing on with our Eighth India, what the kind of scene over there, right? I was just talking about, what's the importance of how do we educate the users in terms of the crypto ecosystem, right? Right now, people think crypto and blockchain is like a get rich quick scheme, right? So we offer crypto investment products to users and investors. They're asking, how can we make 30 to 40% month on month returns? So how do you think, we can kind of change that kind of mindset where people don't think of it as just a lottery scheme?
Well, I think, I mean, there has been times when people were thinking of crypto as a quick money or a 10x, 20x thing, but it is not actually. I mean, when crypto started, we need to understand that crypto started with a basic thing that it is actually I mean, the equity for the blockchain technology that is going on. So when you invest in a crypto, you actually are investing in a project. You're investing in technology. So people should think like that. Those having a pure investor mindset might not be the right persons to judge what is happening in the crypto world, but rather it is better if you see the technology, if you go to the bottom of what the actual utility of the project is, then only will you be able to make the best out of that project and best out of the investment. So that's why I say that when we invested in Infosys, you saw the technology. When you invested in TCS, you saw the technology. So rather investing in any project that come your way, you should think about investing into a project that has got a solid technology base. That is what the case.
Correct. So beware of those Doge coins and those kind of meme coins which are out there, and focus on real investment projects out there. Don't you think?
I must say Dogecoin also has made the utility now. The utility is in Elon Musk, but yes, Dogecoin also is a utility now.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So Dogecoin is primarily dependent on Elon, right? If Elon kind of promotes that, then you see those astronomical growth in Dogecoin over there. Apart from that, what kind of real world utility do you think Dogecoin can offer?
I don't know. I mean, there is a lot to be explored about the blockchain that the Dogecoin is running on. So there might be a lot of things, there might be a lot of use cases that might come up. As of now, we consider it to be a meme coin only, a meme token. But in the times to come, it might also pick some utility. And the utility, I'm talking about two things. I mean, people generally consider confuse utility with use cases. So use cases are totally different from what actual utility is. Utility can even be a financial platform, while the use cases might be actually in the tech sense of things. So these are two different things that should be construed differently always.
Okay, so that's a very interesting point which you pointed out, right? Use case versus utility. People tends to get mixed up quite often, right? Even from more mature audiences as well. It's a very interesting
Yeah,
point which you
utility.
brought up over there.
Yeah, utility could be even for a Web2 project. It not necessarily be a crypto project. So token can be utility for a Web2 project also. But for
Got
it
it.
to be having a use case, it has to be a blockchain-based product. That is the simple difference between these.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. So overall, can you help me understand what kind of difference have you noticed, between Indian users and international users, right? So you've been running CoinGabbar for some while now. You must have noticed, how they perceive the industry differently, right?
Well, I must say there's no difference. I mean, it was initially started out of India, but with India coming up big time. I mean, I've been to many places. I've been to Dubai for a lot of this conferences. But the case is that I mean, the scenario is totally like 60% of the developers are Indians, 60% of the projects are coming up with Indian founders in the place. So there's no difference. I think Indians, being the tech people that they are, they're getting it really well. So there's no difference as such. And I must say that this is the time. I mean, the time is there. And say 3 or 4 years down the line, tech, like all other technology, even the crypto tech will be governed by the Indians in the times to come.
Got it. So would you say that is focus on the tech audience, or would you say even the investor audience across the world is pretty much similar? What do you think?
No, the tech audience is what I'm predominantly considered about. So the investor audience is something different. Tech is
Yeah.
primarily the case that we should consider right now. And
right. So
I'm more
I
focused
was
on talking about the tech thing of it, tech parts of it, not being from the tech background, but tech is what is defining the crypto world today.
got it. Got it. So the reason I asked, from the investor side is because, especially during the last two runs, right, it was the investors who kind of drove the bubble on the higher side, and the investors who kind of drove the bubble on the lower side, right? That's why the focus was on how we can use media to educate the investor users better.
Well, I must say that investor education has not been the primary thing for the crypto projects right now. Investors are
True.
not at all educated about things. There are a lot of wrong things running about it. Web3, why the Web3 bubble burst, we must see that because the investors of the crypto world were not informed about what Web3 actually is all about. So
True.
that is where the case is education plays a very important place. So
Yeah.
if the customers, if the users, if the developers are actually educated about what the tech is coming into and what things are driving this sphere, then only will an actual difference be made. And then only you can actually come up with a stable technology platform. So if you're just talking about something that is an investment scheme, then there are a lot of check funds. Go and invest there. But if you want to talk about the crypto, if you have the tech sense of mind, you need to be educated about it. Why technology is going that way, and what is the factor that is going to drive the technology in the future. That is the case where actual value derivation will be there, and that is when the crypto investment will actually see the light of the day.
Agreed, agreed. So that's the most important thing, right? Truly believe in the project, truly understand the technology of the project, rather than simply focusing on where can I get my free airdrops, where can I make a quick buck. That should be the real
So, I
focus
mean,
difference, right?
there are always different kind of people, different kind of investors. So I mean, a
Yeah,
more focused one, a more sequential one will be the one who will be investing in technology rather than going for just free airdrops. Free airdrops are just like it is a tool of marketing. It is not at all a tool for building a technology. So marketing and technology have to be kept separate in this year also.
exactly, 100% agreed. And that is where the major the disjoint has been, right? Because I see like tons of users, they'll only come for the airdrop, then they leave the project, and it kind of makes the project even more vulnerable because they don't have those two passionate users towards the project, and they only have these quick guys who come in and just leave the project altogether.
Actually, I will put it different way. There's a different angle to it. The people who are airdropping are the ones to blame for it. So you are blaming the person who is actually availing the airdrop. But actually, the case is that if the person who is airdropping is not having a utility, the project will collapse, and that is when the users will face the disappointment. So if the airdropper who is actually airdropping his project to them is careful about what the use case is, even the airdrops will bring much value to the users.
True, true. This reminds me of the SOS airdrop which happened last year, pretty much the same time, right? The SOS airdrop was like one of the biggest airdrops which was ever done
Yeah.
last year.
Like, I mean, there are a lot
Uh,
of cases. There are a lot of things that happen. I mean, we have seen a lot of cases like Ash Panda has been the case. Squid Games have been a case. It started with
right.
something, went to something, and then collapsed like anything. So there are a lot of things that are running in the market. My focus is just at CoinGabbar, we focus on just educating the users about what is right, what is wrong, and what is the basis of a certain thing. So fundamental analysis is the key. You should be able to analyze the project. You should be able to analyze what is going on and what is going to be the value derivation of the project in the future. That is the key to having a sustained investment growth in the times to come.
Absolutely makes sense. And in addition to education, I would say one more very important element is more towards more journalistic kind of things, right? Where you get into actual understanding, actual research, and creating those kind of content. That is going to be the most important thing. So especially what happened with FTX, right? The I would say the start of the domino which happened with FTX was happened when CoinDesk released the balance sheets, right? Somehow they got that access to the FTX balance sheet, and they were able to kind of unravel what the situation is, right? That is like the old school hardcore journalism, which is kind of missing these days. What is your take on that?
Yeah, actually, that was more of an investigative journalism. That was not
Exactly.
actual journalism. That was investigative journalism. But we cannot be running like spies or James Bond, analyzing everything that is coming into the Web3 or crypto space. But the case is that I mean, we would definitely like to welcome a move that Sumit Gupta did with CoinDC. It's like declaring the proof of reserves. And few other exchanges have come up with the same thing, and few exchanges have come up with the proof of liability as well, along with
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
these are welcome moves that will actually establish the faith back into the industry, and the case that people are not actually there to bluff the investors. It is actually a value proposition that the investor can derive, and they can actually trust the centralized exchanges. So this is the one thing that we have to keep, and we should keep these two things separate. So what exchanges did is nothing related to the crypto world. They just had a different platform. They were just doing the investment thing with the users. While when we talk about the crypto world, we talk about the technology. When we talk about the airdrop or taking tokens in your own personal wallets, that is
Mm-hmm.
when you're investing in the technology. When you're investing on an exchange, you're basically playing with the market ups and downs. So
True.
again, if an exchange cheats you, that is from the exchange. And the second thing is that if exchanges like CoinGabbar and other exchanges, these are coming up with, stable proof of reserve and coming up with certain things that can reinstate the faith. That is actually a good move for the market.
Yeah, no, that's definitely an extremely good move. And I get your point regarding not getting to the investigative side. But don't you think there is something that's a demand of the need that just like everything, right? We need to have some checks and balances in place, right? And one
So,
thing has been clear that we can't count on the exchanges to do that by themselves. So maybe we can have like a
right.
third party, journalistic entities who can do that on their behalf, kind of keep things in checks and balance.
Well, I have a rather different perspective about it. I would say that it should be the regulators who should be doing it. Although we are far from a regulatory scenario right now, but
Correct.
actually, wherever the exchange is operating, it should be governed by certain regulation because it is taking public money. So,
Of
like
course.
all the exchanges that we have in the stock market, we should be at least we can regulate the exchanges that are running in the crypto world. That is a very
Yeah.
simple move to do. So, I would insist through your channel, I would insist through this medium to address the government agencies also that if they cannot regulate the crypto market, at least start regulating the exchanges, which is a very, very easy thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you have the exchanges in check, at least the money of the public at large is not going to waste. The
Correct.
crypto schemes and everything might have their own fundamentals on which they survive or they do not. But the exchanges, if they are regulated, they will be having a very clear-cut scenario that the government wants actual investment and that too in a positive sense.
Exactly. So that has been the problem, right? Apart from a few handful of countries like Bahamas, Lithuania, and 10, 12 other countries which we can count on our fingers, most of the countries have been dragging their feet on this. They are wondering whether should we take this on board or not. Uh, I sometimes feel that the governments are trying to, they kind of pretend that if they look the other way, they'll stop the development of the crypto ecosystem. But that's not how it works, right? So it's better that that the wave is coming, just adopt it as quickly as possible and try to regulate it as quickly as possible, and make it dynamic so that as things come, we can constantly evolve those regulations.
Actually, that has been the case. I mean, what I've seen over the past time is that the crypto projects, because of lack of regulation, lack of, say, futuristic attitude by the government of India, have been draining out of India. A lot of the projects are shifted from India to other countries. So, if they want to actually keep this thing in check, if Indian government actually wants the tech to stay in India, they need to come up with certain set of regulations. Otherwise, you will miss the bus. You
Exactly.
have been fantastic. You have been the the pioneer and the superior force in the technology across the world. And why are you messing on the crypto tech? That should be the case. You should promote it rather than just putting a shadow ban on it like taxation, PDS, GST, things like that. So these are not shadow ban activities because you don't want to promote it, you put a shadow ban on it. So rather than
Yeah.
putting a shadow ban, you should actually promote it, keep the tech within the country, and that will help the country evolve much more in this sphere. And you can be the say crypto center of the world in the times to come, like we have been the tech center.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more on this because the way the current system has been, right, it's been so hostile towards the entire crypto ecosystem, which makes it extremely difficult, right? So this for me, as my personal level, this is like the second wave, right? I was a part of the startup ecosystem back in 2013 onwards, and this is the second wave of new and technology. Even back then, the startups were looked at as they were looked at very hostile. That they were not very welcome. Angel funding setup was difficult. VC funding setup was difficult. The government was creating new and new roadblocks. There was an angel tax, if you recall, back in 2015, 2016, right?
Yes, of
Where
course.
angel
Yes.
had to pay 30% tax, which was absolutely hideous. So rather than doing those kind of things, why not just work together and ensure that the talent stays in India instead of moving to something like a Dubai? Because this is a true opportunity where Silicon, even Silicon Valley in the Web3 system is still kind of not that matured, not that
They are
advanced.
lagging behind.
They are
They
lagging
are
behind.
lagging
Exactly. So
behind.
this is the opportunity where the Asian countries like Indonesia, Asia, Vietnam, India, etc. We have an opportunity to do something. So better grab this opportunity with both hands rather than trying to create as you pointed out shadow ban regulations.
Exactly. That should be the case always. I mean, the government should rather than closing their eyes and acting like somebody who doesn't know anything, they should actually be doing something. And what the biggest problem is that the government lobby is filled with bureaucrats. I might be punished for openly criticizing the government lobby, but the bureaucracies even don't have a hang of it. The most sharpest of all the IAS officers even won't be having a hang of this tech right now. So what I propose to the government is hire as more as many tech people as possible from IITs, from other engineering institutions. They can actually consult government about these things, and so the government can actually understand the technology and can bring up certain regulations on the basis of it.
100%. One could not agree better, on this because the way the foot is being dragged, that kind of takes it on the negative level, right? So that is why, especially, what happened with FTX, we need to ensure that that doesn't happen again, right? You need to have separate custody providing, exchange should be focusing on trading and that kind of stuff. It can only happen with better, seamless regulations. That makes it easier. So coming back to the, the FTX case, right? What do you think of the current media tour he's trying to do to kind of salvage the reputation? The last week with the Economic Times conference and everything, it kind of seems like a complete betrayal of the trust, don't you think? Sudeep? Sudeep, are you there? So, as I was saying, the current FTX tour which he's doing with the Economic Times and all these other publications, right? It seems like a huge misplace of the customer trust which people have placed on that. So personally, I kind of feel that this was kind of a huge letdown in terms of what the users felt about FTX. So what can we do, kind of, in the precautionary sense, to ensure that these kind of situations don't happen, that we don't get on a damaging tour? Because what happens is, because of that one thing, the entire ecosystem then has to kind of play a part in ensuring that everything is kind of taking it forward. So that is where it becomes extremely important to ensure that we take the right steps. And beforehand itself, obviously, if the asset ends up losing money, that's a different ball game altogether. But first, kind of losing the money, then trying to salvage the reputation like this, that is kind of the wrong way to kind of take this thing forward. So that is kind of an important issue which I think we need to focus on. And especially if you look at even the media companies, right? Considering currently what happened, um, with the FTX scenario, right? You have most of these companies who are, most of the media companies, they should have a much more stronger task and a stronger responsibility to ensure that these kind of scams kind of don't take place, by kind of educating the users. And rather than kind of just focusing on the ad dollars where they can end up making more money, they also end up focusing on the due diligence aspect of it, where each and everything which comes, right? For example, if I want to get published on, say, a Bloomberg or a Forbes, for any company out there, they have to go through a stringent due diligence process, a licensing process, and they kind of have to give them a lot of details to ensure that those things are taken care of. But if those things are not taken care of on time, it becomes extremely problematic on the longer run. So essentially what the focus should be, that even this media companies should have a lot of accountability, in terms of they can't just randomly, if someone is paying them the big dollars, they should still go through a thorough due diligence to ensure that the entire process is kind of taken care of. So that is essentially was the entire focus of the discussion for today. The role of media companies in ensuring that we focus on getting the right information, right education to the users, and focus on the development side of it, rather than just randomly creating content. So that is why this focus was there. And unfortunately, we've lost Sudeep. He had to take his flight, so I just got a message from him that he won't be able to continue. He has to board his flight right now. But I would really like to thank Sudeep and the kind of work he's doing with CoinGabbar in terms of educating the users, how to navigate the crypto ecosystem. And it's, since it's available in Hindi, I think it's a good platform for Indian users as well to learn more about crypto. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sudeep, for your time. And I would love to thank our viewers as well to be a wonderful audience for today. Thank you so much.